people get their news today? We might give two different answers: the newspaper or news website. In fact, a lot of talking points today are about the rise of the internet and how it's taking away from newspapers, making them lose revenue because people can get their news online. There seems to be this notion that news today is accessed either through a newspaper or through a news website, and that's not entirely based on fact. Fact is, rather, that people are now getting their news from themselves as well. Here, let me explain. The way news was given out before the internet was a little different than it is now. News companies had more say in what was published and what was not. People paid for the news. News companies were the dominant source of news. Even when radio came out and then television, the technologies were kept to the traditional single author to many audiences format, which allowed the news companies to use them effectively. As long as the competition for each company was limited to other companies, it was kept somewhat level and fair. However, when the internet started becoming prevalent, it wasn't kept to that traditional format, the single author to many audiences format. All of a sudden, the only limiters on people getting word out to others were the credibility of the person and their popularity. Anyone could create their own website and be providing anyone else with content. So what essentially happened is the grapevine became a much more convoluted mess than what it was before. You know how people say about some news they found out about that they heard it through the grapevine, and they mean they heard it from this person who heard it from that person. So with the internet, the grapevine was made much bigger and the connections it had were increased. Now a certain person could have heard of something from a news website, an entertainment website showing awesome videos, and an online forum made for discussion of current events. And then that person might make a blog about it later and cite those 3 websites in his post. Still others might post about whatever happening it is on Facebook or Twitter, where someone who might not know anything about it will find out about it. So this is how people are starting to get their news from themselves. Perhaps the origin of most news is still news companies, but the grapevine is broadening its horizons. Hey, even the origin of some news is from the people. Someone might post a video of a concert they go to or of a solar eclipse. News now is involving more and more the populace in an attempt to combat this. There are varying degrees of interaction, but each way of doing it can be summed up by these 4. Users and mainstream media, amateurs and professionals together, collaborative content creation, and citizen journalists. The first method, users and mainstream media, simply lets users post their own news stories without fact-checking or editing them at all. The next, amateurs and professionals together, has the professionals asking for input from their audience regarding whatever story they're doing. Collaborative content creation is where people in no way related get together to create their own stories for their own site, on their own time, for their own benefit. And citizen journalists is basically like users in mainstream media, where the users post their own stories, except that submitted stories are fact-checked and edited before being published.